I served in the Korean War. I served in the United States Marine Corps. No, I enlisted in the Marine Corps September 11th, 1947, at Atlanta, Georgia. Westford is my hometown. I was in Georgia on a football scholarship at the University of Georgia. I served in the invasion of Inchon, the assault and securing of Seoul, and the Hungnam Chosin Reservoir campaign. Traveled from the East Coast to the West Coast on a troop train. We traveled by ship from the West Coast of the United States to Kobe, Japan. Kobe, Japan was the standing off point for the invasion of Inchon, Korea. I served aboard the USS Mississippi, a battleship, and one of my buddies was killed in the invasion of Inchon. Yeah. I was in motor transport. I was a truck driver. We transported troops and ammunition and other supplies from one point to another throughout the campaign in Korea. Particularly at that point, transporting them from Inchon to Seoul and points in between. The Dundees were the people to whom I was assigned.
When you were at the Chosin Reservoir, what were your experiences there?
We were surrounded. The objective was to stay alive and repel the foe. One of the people with whom I was assigned, when it was in my outfit, was killed by airlift. They were dropping supplies to us. In fact, it was just almost a miracle that they were able to drop supplies because it was overcast quite a bit, and they had to come in very, very quickly. When they found an opening for us to drop the supplies, they dropped them. They airlifted us in because machine guns and everything, even in these water-cooled machine guns, they had to just burn the barrels right off them because the opposition. They had about, I forget what the stats were now, but they were about Koreans, the Chinese outnumbered us up at the reservoir there, but maybe 150 to 1 or 50,000 to 3,000 people and so forth, or 10,000 people. I don't know what the ratio really was, but it was astronomical, the number of North Koreans and Chinese that outnumbered us. We served up there with the Army. One thing about the Marine training is that General MacArthur was a genius. He was. He brought us into Inchon, where the water drops about 30 feet in 1 hour. You have to know what you're doing when you go into an invasion like that, because some of the ships, the landing equipment and so forth, was been high and dry for some time afterwards, after the invasion, and they had to wait for the next day for the water to come in again. Those are some of the things that are quite memorable when you look back and see the time frame within which we had to get in and then wait until for the next wave, the next tide to come in to bring in more reinforcement. 3,000 men, thereabouts, 3,000 troops were lost. And I'm not sure if that is total of Army and Marine Corps or just the Marine Corps, but reportedly 3,000 were lost at the reservoir. It has often been said that had the Chinese maintained pressure from us from all around, then they probably would have wiped us out. But they were concentrating from the zone to the sea. We're going to the ocean, Hungnam. And if they had concentrated all these forces on our escape route, we probably never would have made it. But happily or gladly, for us at least, they maintained equal force all around, and we were able to fight through that. Our infantry troops, they on the way out, they were taking the high ground, because had they not done that, those of us who were on the escape route, and even in the trucks, we were carrying wounded and even dead on our trucks. We had them strapped to the vehicles. Had they concentrated wholly on our escape route, then it would have been difficult to get out. But when we came out, thousands of Koreans came out with us. They knew what life was under the regime, under the North Korean regime, and what it would be like under the Chinese regime. So thousands of Koreans came out with us, civilians. Of course, one thing about the back and forth war over there was that whenever our own forces would be impeded and would have to be fighting in some of these villages, you'd see the civilians waving makeshift American flags. I'm sure that the opposite was true when the North Koreans and the Chinese were coming in. I suppose they were waving their flags. But this was a memorable occasion to see them. They knew that we were their salvation, and they really did want South Korea and the United States to win. What they referred to as the 1st Marine Brigade, they landed in Busan and took over from there. South Koreans expected all of our reinforcements to come in from the south, from Busan. But again, they never thought in the world thought that we'd ever come in there because of the tide situation. 30 feet in 1 hour, it's a lot of water coming in and going out. Because of MacArthur's genius, when we hit Inchon, and the word got down to the North Koreans, they had almost pushed the army into the ocean. They got word of that, they headed back north. We captured a lot of them down south, though. Well, after Busan, when I returned from Hamhung and Hungnam to Busan, then I went home because my year was up. I enlisted for 1947 to 1950, but when the Korean War broke out, they extended me and a lot of others for 1 year involuntarily, and they sent us over. And they made sure that when our year was up, that those of us whose time was up, had expired, they made sure that we came back to the States in time for our discharge. I may have left Korea in July of August, so that I'd be back in the States and had to have all the separation papers taken care of, all the formalities by the separation from the Corps by September 10th. So it would have been from September 11th of 47 to September 10th of 51. Well, when I went home, I didn't stay home too long because I went to New York to try my hand at professional boxing. I moved out to New York and I was there for several months. And that's when I signed with the Dundies and I boxed. And again, like I said, the headaches came back and I figured that it was time to select another career. I played in high school. I went to Keith Academy in Lowell. That was run by the Zavarian brothers. It is where the Lowell Y is right now, in North Thorndike Street. It was a prison before that, years and years ago. That's where I graduated from high school. Played football and baseball. Football, I played right guard in football, and I played outfield in baseball. My brother Gilbert was our athletic director, and he was the founder of Babe Ruth in an industrial school in Baltimore years ago. And he was our athletic director. And Brother Gilbert set it up so for me to go down, and it worked out. I stayed with the Baltimore Orioles for a week, and then I came back and graduated. And at that time, going to college on a scholarship seemed like a bigger deal than going to a AA team in baseball, so I opted to take the football scholarship. At times, I regretted it. Baseball was my first love. And it wasn't until I got into the Corps that I found that boxing was my choice. I didn't go to college until I got out of the Corps. But when I was in the Corps in boxing, the skipper of my ship, the Navy skipper, the four-striper, he sent me to Annapolis, Maryland, because at that time it was a prep school for the Naval Academy. And he sent me up there to, I could have had 4 years for free, and I blew it. I really didn't have the urge to go hit the books, and it wasn't until after I got out of the service that I went back to college, and I graduated from Northeastern University. The skipper of the ship, he was an avid boxing fan, and he really treated me like a son. My wife and I dated when I was in high school. The way things turned out, the better. I came home, I went to turn pro, had headaches, didn't pursue it, and my wife and I got together again, and we married. We had 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son. My son owns this property now. He lives next door. He and his wife have 3 boys themselves. I'm surprised that the North Koreans haven't been more bellicose because they have nothing. The South Korea is Americanized and abject poverty in the North. I feel sorry for the North Koreans, and I feel happy for the South Koreans because they are enjoying our way of life. I'm glad that Truman realized that the necessity for going into Korea. Otherwise, we would have lost all of Southeast Asia. I'm very proud of the service. I'm very proud that I served the country, and I'm even more proud that I served it in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is known for its camaraderie, one for all for one. We never leave our own behind, dead or wounded. And I'm very proud of my service to the country and to the Corps. A young Marine would holler out Semper Fi, as would an old Marine. There's a bond there with young and old. And there's something that the other branches of the service just don't have. They've all done a blended job, but they just don't have that camaraderie. The Marine Corps is known for that. and that's something to be noted. But a personal accomplishment was having boxed in the service. And funny thing about boxing, the first day I went aboard ship, there was a contingent of us, might have been 7 to a dozen coming on, and the equal number going off the ship. I didn't know what the protocol was on the ship at the time. I didn't realize that when the old timers left, that the top bunks were for the choosing of the others in the detachment. So when I came aboard ship, I saw a top bunk. I said, "Gee, this is a pretty good deal." So I threw my sea bag up there, and somebody, my voice from over in the corner there, told me in no uncertain terms and not very pleasant language that I'm not entitled to that. Well, one thing led to another. Loud words, pushing and shoving, and a few punches thrown. We were interrupted by others who had maybe better judgment than us, and they took us down to the Chief Master at Arms office. The Chief Master at Arms happened to be the boxing coach on the ship, the USS Mississippi, and it was USS Mississippi EAG 128, Experimental Auxiliary Gunner. He took us down there, and Bill Brennan was the Chief Master at Arms. Bill Brennan, in his heyday, had been a professional boxer. In his heyday, he had fought world champions. He never fought for a world championship, but he fought world champions. When they took me down to the shack, and this guy who I had a few words with and a few punches thrown, he says to Bill, "Hey, Bill, I got another guy for your stable." And then he walks off. So Brennan says, "Are you interested in boxing?" So I said to him, "Well, it all depends. What's the pros and cons?" Well, he said, if you win fights, you don't do as much detail. And the details he meant at that time, one of the details was standing on the fantail of the ship, like out in Chesapeake Bay in the middle of the winter. It's pretty cold. So he said, you don't have to do, and a lot of other small chores, we call it dirty chores. If you won fights, you wouldn't do a lot of those dirty chores. So I said, well, I'll think about it. So after a few more nights on the fantail in Chesapeake Bay in the winter, I think I can make a better life on this ship than this. So I went back to Brendan and I said, hey, I'll give it a shot. So I started boxing, and one thing led to another. We had tournaments for battleship cruiser tournament. I won that both the years, 48 and 49. Then they have the Atlantic Fleet Championship, and I won that in 48 and 49. And then they fly to California for the All-Navy. In 48, I missed out the last night. I lost. That's when I got the runner-up belt from Admiral Nimitz. The following year, I went back. This time it was Oakland, California. And after having won the Atlantic Fleet again and this Virginia State title, then I went on to win the All-Navy. And it was described in the Leatherneck magazine as the most brutal heavyweight goes, as they call it, ever staged in Navy competition. Also, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the competitive nature, and I was very pleased. As a personal note, I enjoy that more than anything in the Corps. The most memorable thing was though in the service in Korea.